finally live here. We are going to be doing our OD lunch break with Dr. Mick Kling. He should be joining us any moment. I am at home, obviously self-quarantined. We had everyone work from home today, or for really the remainder of the month at our office, obviously in light of everything going on. So Mick should be joining us any moment. Hopefully I'm coming through nice and clear. Got the AirPods going. Got the cat hanging. So Mick, if you're seeing this, as soon as I see your request to join come through, we'll be good to go. Hopefully everyone's having a good day today in light of everything going on. I know it's a busy one over here, but some positive news in the markets and whatnot, which is good. Happy to see that. Thank you everyone for joining. Get started in a second, so stay tuned. I got the good lighting here, I feel like. Got the nice shadow being cast. There we go. Okay. Good. All right. Mick should be joining us any minute here. Hey, Mick.
Hey, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. You have to forgive my technical inadequacies here. It took me a minute to figure out how to get logged in, but I'm good.
You did great. Yeah,
awesome.
2 minutes past. We're right on time. Well, let's jump into it. You and I are originally going to just talk about practice finance, a topic which we've done before and obviously want to do a lot more of. But I guess in light of everything going on with the coronavirus and with it impacting practices, perhaps we could tailor the conversation to that. I know we're kind of throwing, and we're just gonna go into this topic. Is there anything you want to kick it off with, or just something that's like kind of the most pressing thing you want to get across to anyone who's both a practice owner who's watching, or maybe a student or an employee who's curious about how this is affecting things in general?
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is such a unique time. I've been asked over the last 2 or 3 days by a number of colleagues, like, what are you doing in your own practice? And as I always say in my when I'm lecturing, I am an absolute expert of my own opinion. So that's what I'm going to give you is my own opinion about sort of how we're managing these things. But I think what makes this just such just an unusual and unique situation is that we're all being impacted simultaneously. In other words, this isn't a situation where, my practice just got into financial trouble and I decided to buy a Porsche instead of use my money wisely, and now I can't pay my bills. This is like we're all in this together. So it really creates a very unique situation for us. So what I did is I just started to go down and make a list of the things that I thought were absolutely most critical for our practice, to just make sure that we were doing the right things financially to keep ourselves afloat. So that's what I would be happy to share with you, sort of how we're managing things.
Sure.
So, well, the first thing, let me tell you, the first thing that really became sort of utmost importance to me is what are we going to do to take care of our people, our staff, our team? Mm-hmm. Without our teams, we really have nothing. In fact, we don't have a business. And so there's been a lot of chatter about what legislation might come through to help offset some of the costs to manage our payroll. My feeling is we need to make sure our people are taken care of. So right now we're making sure that everybody is whole in the practice. We are scaling back the number of people that are in the practice from a worker standpoint. But at this point, we're not making any requirements as far as reducing compensation for employees. We're not forcing anybody to take vacation time or any paid time off. We're just continuing to pay our people as they need to be paid until we make sense of this. The big question around that is, I think, how long can we sustain that? Obviously, we have limited resources like most businesses. So the very first thing is I just settled our people down and said, listen, everybody, we're going to continue to compensate everybody just like we've been doing, but on somewhat of a skeleton crew.
Right. Okay, so that's number one, is control expenses, obviously, but you've got your practice family there to care for.
Absolutely. And the second thing was really just looking at my own compensation and the compensation of the owners in the practice. And this is going to be really an individual decision, but at some point, depending on your own personal financial situation, I think we as owners need to decide how we're going to manage our own compensation. And what we are planning to do in the short term is just to leave a little bit in the business and not, take out so much money out of the business from an owner standpoint, just to make sure we have the cash reserves. Right now, maintaining our cash position is the absolute most critical thing that we do. Mm-hmm. And if you're the owner of a business and you can afford not to have to take money out of your practice right now, I'd really encourage you to leave that cash in your business for now. If at some point when things settle down, you can pay yourself back, great, get caught up, that's fine. But if you can afford, if your personal lifestyle will afford you the ability to not pull the cash out of the business, I would really strongly recommend you try to leave as much money in the business as possible.
Yep. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And so just to rewind, it seems that, and from that Jobson survey that came out, practices are being affected by this. Obviously, I think I was just reading on CNBC a headline that, in New York, they're going to be just kind of mandating a completely just everyone quarantine, stay at home. And this is happening, different states, different ways, shutting down gyms, shutting down bars. No one wants to go to any sort of healthcare practice, let alone, so this can impact us in the short term and the long term, right?
Yep.
And the critical thing here, or the message for why you want to keep cash in the business, is ultimately because you need to keep your finances healthy, and you can't take the hit because there won't be that revenue coming in. There still will be rent to pay. There still be some electricity to pay, all those static expenses, finance payments to make, and you don't want to default on them. You don't want to incur interest on them. So, in summary, for all those
absolutely.
out there.
And, there are certain expenses within our business that I would call key or critical expenses within the business. Those obligations, I believe, need to be met and maintained. Things like we just talked about, paying our people, making sure our people are compensated. Number two, your rent or your mortgage. Obviously, if you don't have a facility to operate out of, that is going to be catastrophic to your business. So we want to make sure those obligations are met. Also, things like electricity. You and I, Matt, are in San Diego. I don't trust San Diego Gas and Electric that they won't shut off my electricity. So I'm going to choose to pay my electricity bill because I think that's something that could really get us into trouble. But many of the other things, like a lot of our third-party bills that really are not critical or essential to the day-to-day operation of our business, if you have to take some steps and prioritize those expenses, obviously those non-essential expenses in the business, those are the things that I think need to be put on the back burner in the short term. Just make sure you're meeting those critical needs, your people, your occupancy, also your vendors, your key vendors. You don't want any of your vendors to freeze your accounts. If you're going to continue to be open and operate, the last thing you want to do is the products that you're trying to sell, you don't want those to be frozen so you can't have access to the products that you need to be selling, or things that just need to meet the needs of our patients. So those are kind of what I would consider the critical expenses within the business that need to be obviously met first.
What financial statements would a practice owner utilize right now to understand how to best manage the current situation? And is there one more so than others that one would utilize to understand how, the next, say, let's just call it 2 to 4 weeks?
Yeah, great question. And unfortunately, our typical financial statements are our P&L, our balance sheet, and our statement of cash flows. Unfortunately, none of those are going to do us much good in the immediate moment, because our profit and loss statement, unfortunately, really tells us how we have done in the past. It doesn't tell us how we're going to be doing in the future. And our balance sheet just tells us what we have and what we owe. So that doesn't provide us a lot of useful information other than telling us how much money we have in the bank, which we can get access to that information by picking up our cell phone. So I think, unfortunately, those reports, which are important in the management of your business, don't do us a lot of good in the short term, immediate. So this is about making sure that you're prioritizing your cash flow, doing everything you can to make sure the inflows are still coming in, and that you're controlling or mitigating as much of the outflow as possible. Things like making sure you're collecting your copays at the time of service, and getting rid of some of these pay half now and half at pickup policies. making sure insurance claims are getting filed in a timely manner, making sure those denied claims are getting resubmitted if necessary. So all those are things that you can do to make sure that the cash is flowing in. And then we talked briefly about sort of mitigating some of the outflow of the cash in the business. So really, reports aren't going to do us a whole lot of good. It's about just maintaining your cash, preserving your cash right now.
Got it. And for those of you watching, feel free to ask questions on the overall situation. Keep in mind, we're talking mostly finance here in relation to the current state of affairs with coronavirus, how that's impacting things economically. I want to shift gears a little bit to how, let's go to the personal finance side, and maybe we go back to the business side, but how will this impact those in a personal financial sense? Maybe they're not practice owners, maybe they're new graduates or senior ODs. I mean, how should folks look at this situation from a personal finance perspective?
Yeah, if you're a business owner, it's practically impossible for the business finances not to start to intermingle with your personal finances, and it's practically impossible to separate those two. And I think all of us need to look at our personal financial situation just like we do our business and say, what are the most basic fundamental things that I need to make sure I'm doing on the personal side, which is also preserving our cash. Make sure the things that are most critical to our survival are met. Things like paying your mortgage or your rent, making sure you're preserving your cash for your groceries, making sure that you have some form of transportation and you've got cash to be able to buy gas for your car, for instance. All those essential things, pay your electricity bill like we talked about, all those are essential things that need to be done on the personal side, just like we do with our business. I wanted, something I just thought about as we were going through this, one thing that I think is a really good time to do, and that is turn off all of those auto debits that we have tied to our bank accounts. A lot of us, out of convenience, allow third-party companies to come into our bank account and automatically deduct bills out of our checking account. And I completely understand the convenience of that. But now is not the time to just let any company come in and start pulling cash out of either your business or out of your personal finances. This would be a really good time to make sure all those auto debits are turned off, because we need to make sure we're controlling the outflow of money both out of our businesses and out of our personal checking accounts. And I'm a big advocate of not setting those up in the first place, but if you've got them, I understand, but now's a good time to go back and turn those off.
Okay. Back to the business side, a question here, and then we could jump back to personal or wherever. How do you plan to compensate for revenue losses after this situation subsides?
Well, I'm not sure we can make ourselves completely whole, but I think it's important to stay optimistic that this is a temporary crisis and that we are going to come out of it. And I suspect what's going to happen is we're going to all get massively busy as soon as as the dust settles in this situation. So while we may not make ourselves completely whole on the revenue side, I think, assuming this is going to be a short-term problem, and when I say short-term, I'm not talking days, it could be weeks and maybe even months. I think there's going to be a massive recovery that's going to occur, because we're in a profession that really is essential for a lot of people. And so you can only postpone your eye care needs for so long until at some point you've got to go back and address those. So again, while we may not be completely whole, I think we will definitely rebound from this and hopefully come back at least close to where we would have been before all this all started.
Yeah, and to answer that question from a personal perspective, look, a business sees revenue, but a person sees income, right? That's like you have your own personal revenue. And so, last night, what I looked at was my personal budget for the year, and I did my best to cut out, I was looking, how do I cut out $10,000 from my budget for the year? Because I see an opportunity in the market, and I'm not trying to time the market. I have my own asset allocations that I choose. But how do I remove stuff? So removing my travel category was easy, right? Yeah. Because traveling is going to be cut. And I like to travel, so we had a good amount of money, put away there. So I'm cutting that, and now I'm going to be buying, ETFs and things that track the market in a balanced fashion to buy in on this market discount. And I'm not trying to time the bottom or anything like that, but it is, the market just went on sale, essentially. And so from a personal perspective, although, you need to consult your own financial professional and judge with your own amount of your own risk tolerance, technically things are at a discount now from where they were. And if you look at the average recession, and how long those last, all of that data is out there. You can confidently say that this is a good opportunity if you have cash on hand, whether it's cutting expenses or you have cash laying around, however much that might be, to be able to invest at a discount. And then that will therefore grow and you can take advantage of that. But you've got to be smart, and you can't just, I'm going to pick Apple and I'm going to pick this stock and that. There's a strategy to it for a different
for sure. Every crisis also yields opportunity, right? And so to your point, as tough of a situation this is, there are also great opportunities. And you raise a great point about, hey, listen, I'm not going to be spending all this money on travel. Now I've got these resources that I either have an opportunity to hold on to, just if I feel like I need to hold the cash, or I can make an investment with those funds that I would have earmarked for that travel. And the same thing in our businesses. Now is a perfect time to go back and challenge every single expense in your business and say, if this is not directly leading to profitability in my business, just get rid of it. You can always add it back, when things sort of settle back down. This is a great opportunity to just say, listen, do we absolutely critically need this right now in our lives to survive? If the answer is no, get rid of it, come back and revisit it at some point in the future, because then you can use those resources to, like you said, invest in something else, or just even stockpile the cash so that you have it when you need it down the road.